So in this video, I want to speak more about the common denominator around commitment and around successful people who have all shared these, wonderful results that if you're going through these modules, you most likely have an aspiration to achieve yourself in certain areas. And so when it comes to the common denominators, what I've found is that there is one common denominator with successful people, and that is that they have this next level passion for what it is that they do. Now, passion isn't necessarily the thing that I want to be focusing on in this video, because what I've learned is that passion is actually the effect of a cause, and I much prefer that we address the causes instead of the effects, because by addressing the causes, that will impact the effects, but it's more difficult to make a change with the effects unless you address the causes first, which is why I've been speaking so much about cause and effect throughout the modules. But yeah, it's kind of like, just to give you an example, it's kind of like trying to treat the symptom instead of actually treating the cause and the disease. So an example in health is that most people, they go to the doctors and the doctor gives them a painkiller for having a headache, when really all they need to do is drink more water, because being dehydrated causes headaches. So that's what we mean by cause and effect. But with what I was saying about passion is the effect of a cause. Because when you look up what passion actually means, passion simply means to sacrifice. That is it. It just means the person who has made the biggest sacrifice. And that's why, for example, when you look at one of the most passionate people in the world was Jesus Christ. And that's why we call it the Passion of Christ. It's like that movie that Mel Gibson made. So when you look at the sacrifice that is made, that is the cause. And that, for me, is the real common denominator, not passion. So sacrifice is the main common denominator. And what we mean to sacrifice is not just to give something up that you feel like you want to give up, but to truly sacrifice means that you give something up that you genuinely care about. And I feel like there's no better story to illustrate sacrifice and what it truly means than the biblical story of Abraham, or the Islamic story of Ibrahim, which is where the main protagonist in the story, Abraham, he is asked by God to sacrifice the one thing in his life that he cares about the most, which is his son. And he's actually asked to sacrifice his son, Ishmael or Ismail. And the way that this is done is that God asks him to make this sacrifice so that he can have something, better for the future. And it gets to the point where he's about to put a knife to his son's throat, and at the last second, God just pulls away his son and replaces it with a sheep. So that's how the story goes. And the message behind this really is that sacrifice is necessary if you want to make a covenant with God to have in exchange a price for what you pay right now for something that you don't want to, in exchange for a result that you do want. It's kind of like that law of polarity. If you want to create something that you want, then you have to also go through something that you don't want. You have to go through hell to get to heaven. And the beautiful thing about the story is that it actually illustrates how it is not necessarily always that you have to make the sacrifice. It is just that you have to be willing to show that you will make the sacrifice. And then sometimes just by showing that willingness, there's another opportunity that comes in front that was not even expected. It's kind of like magical. Wow, where did that come from? And I've had countless times in my life where I just showed the willingness to sacrifice, and then God provided anyway. And something came up, something magical. And I've heard this from many of the people who I've networked with and been able to connect with, who are highly successful now, where they didn't necessarily make the sacrifice, but they were just willing. Now that doesn't mean that you can go through life without making sacrifices. What I mean to say here is that you don't get to choose when that sacrifice is um, going to be not necessarily made. That just tends to happen whenever you get a lucky time, or when you've been more fortunate. But in most cases, when you're working towards success and you're striving towards excellence, then sacrifice is something that is a requirement. It's something that you have to do continuously to build up that passion. And each time that you lose something, each time you have to let go and say goodbye, then that's a time that builds strength within you to continue going and moving forwards, and to give you that commitment. Like, one of the things that I sacrificed, for example, in my journey, was one of the things I cared about the most, and that was I was deeply in love with my ex-girlfriend, and I knew that if I was to continue going with her, then I was never going to be able to get the results that I truly wanted in my business, because we weren't aligned in that particular area. So I made the sacrifice, which absolutely broke my heart, and I did so, and I felt like I'd made the wrong decision. I kept second guessing myself all the time, and I feel like that's one of the ways that you truly know that what you've done is a sacrifice, because afterwards you start to doubt yourself for the decision that you made, and it's showing how much that was a great sacrifice because of the level of connection that you had towards whatever it was that you did sacrifice. So sacrifice is a truly beautiful thing, and you can only see it from the lens of a person who understands the full time frame of how everything is played out. Because, like for my example, everyone in our family who knew that we were together, they looked at me as the villain, and the reason for why they saw that is because they didn't see the full picture fleshed out. They just saw that this is a stupid thing that he's doing, and it's bad for all parties. So sacrifice is one of those things where you are bargaining with the future. That's pretty much what you're doing. And unless you have a vision for the future, then sacrifice never makes sense. So if you feel like right now, like, I am not able to make any kind of sacrifice, I don't know what I can sacrifice, I feel like I cannot sacrifice, then what you need to be thinking about a little bit more and focusing on in more detail is painting that picture as to what you want that future to be. And if you don't have a future that you're working towards, I'm pretty sure you're in the wrong platform right now. You're in the wrong program. But if you do have that future that you're really looking to create, that is magnificent, that is beautiful, and that is way beyond where you currently are right now, then you're in the right program, and that's going to help you so much with making that sacrifice. So there's a couple of things that I would suggest after watching this video. One is to really look back at the vision, look back at why you're doing what you're doing, and then ask yourself a question of, what do I need to let go of in order to receive and create space for what it is that I'd like to welcome into my life? What do I need to say goodbye to so I can say hello to something else? And once you've got that one thing written down, then you want to sit down with yourself and just go through the motions of viewing the scenarios as to what it's going to be like to make that sacrifice. I'm going to actually go through in another video decision making and how you can sit down with yourself and go through the 3 scenarios. So don't worry too much if you feel like it's a bit daunting. We're going to go through it, and you'll know exactly how to make that decision in a way where it's the best decision that you can be making going forwards. But understand that sacrifice is huge. It's what all successful people do. You can see them speak about it time and time again, and it is a requirement for you to become successful. So start to get used to it, accept it, and eventually embrace it, because this is something that you can absolutely love once you get to that point of understanding sacrifice and really what it means for you. But yeah, that's a video I had to make, and on the next one I'm going to go through what we call the trust equation, so that you have a mathematical formula for how you can start going forwards in making some decisions as well. It helps with that process. So I'll see you on that one.